Now here's your host, Jason Voorhees and Aaron Savage.
Oh, yeah!
Hello, everybody, and welcome to another edition of the Sports and Metal Podcast. We are your hosts, Aaron Savage. With me, as always, my partner in crime, Mr. Jason Voorhees. And we've got a very exciting show for you guys this week. We have a lot to talk about. Before we get started, though, I want to give a shout out to our sponsors. First and foremost, Lots of Rain Watches. If you were looking at the ticker before the show started, I think it still said 10%. We hadn't updated that, but no, look, your eyes aren't deceiving you. Starting immediately, we have an exclusive sponsorship with Lots of Rain Watches. 25% off your purchase at checkout. Use our promo code SNM. That's the letters SNM as in sports and metal. You go to www.lotsofrain.com. That's LA-TOURINE.com. And you're going to save 25% off your purchase using our exclusive promo code SNM. You're not going to get a deal like that anywhere else. That is an exclusive promo code exclusively through our show with our promo code SNM. Beautiful handcrafted watches by Lots of Rain. Use our promo code. Once again, you're going to save 25% off. That's correct. 25% off. www.la-TOURAINE.com. And let's not forget our other sponsor, betus.com. Use our affiliate link. You can see it on the screen below me here. If you're listening later on Spotify or Apple Podcast or anywhere you listen to your podcast, just go in the description of the podcast. You'll see the affiliate link there. Use that. You're going to get 125% bonus on your first $100 deposit. So without further ado, let's get started. How are you, Jay?
Doing good. Glad to be back.
Awesome. So, yeah, we got a lot to talk about this week. The biggest thing me and Jay wanted to get into this week was the World Baseball Classic. Japan just won, I believe, for the third time. The World Baseball Classic just started in 2006. The United States was trying to repeat. They won the last one in 2017. They didn't get the repeat. Japan wins it for the third time. And, Jay, what is your overall take on the World Baseball Classic? I want to hear your thoughts.
I mean, I'm not going to lie to you. This is the first year I actually watched it. And maybe it was selfish because I actually got excited because 3 Phillies were on the team. Well, 3 Phillies were on the U.S. team just alone. And obviously they had Ranger Suarez.
And in the starting lineup.
They had Garrett Stubb. So, yes, that's what I mean. So I think that probably selfishly made me watch it. I'm kind of surprised that I didn't watch it in the past, though, because I got to be honest, the games that I did watch, I mean, it was awesome. Like, what really, truly, like, I don't want to say surprises me, but, like, it shows me just how the world in different countries are on a different level compared to the United States. Like, their teams and their fans' pride of watching that thing is like night and day compared to the United States. Like, it's like almost like they live on like every pitch, the other countries. And it's like, it's more like how the Olympics are treated. And I just feel like it's kind of a shame because, like, I don't think we really realized how big this tournament really was and how much fun it could be to watch.
I'm going to give you my take on it. When it was first, announced back in 2000, well, it was announced prior to 2006, whatever year, many years before that, because leading up to the World Baseball Classic, I know, like, there's certain teams that are just in it based on their prior appearances. But there's, like, all these, like, qualifying rounds, I believe. I don't know how it exactly works, but it's probably something like the World Cup in soccer. So, like, for example, I think this was the first year Great Britain was in the main part of the World Baseball Classic. It was the first year they qualified. I don't remember what country might have been in the past that wasn't now, but so you have other countries that can come in there based on prior qualifying rounds in the years leading up to the World Baseball Classic. I'll be honest with you. I mean, when it first was incarnated, I was excited for it, but I kind of lost interest in it. 2009, whatever years, I don't remember watching too much. I remember I was excited because David Wright was on the one year and they called him Captain America when he was on Team USA. But it wasn't like, wow, this is I was just looking forward to the regular baseball season. It wasn't something that really, piqued my interest or caught my attention. And the attendance never seemed that great for it. And, you still have the same arguments today. Like, the timing of it seems really bad. Guys are ramping up to play in this really competitive tournament. when they haven't really warmed up. They haven't had any spring training, so you worry about injuries. Guys usually when they're just kind of just throwing back on the backfields now are competing, throwing 102 miles an hour in games that matter in March, and that there's some controversy to that. So I mean, there's always been the cons that you think about, but something about it this year was different. I don't know what it was. Just watching it, it just seemed like the interest, maybe because of COVID-19. And we lost that season basically with the 60-game baseball season, and and just things having not been normal for so long. And obviously, this was the first since 2017. I think it was supposed to be in 2021. I could be wrong on that. I know initially back when it started, it was every 3 years. I think it became every 4. Again, correct me if I'm wrong. Like I said, I was never that into it to even give you all these stats. But I think it was I know it was 2006, 2009. So I know initially it was every 3 years. I do think they switched it to every 4. But again, it was postponed because of COVID. So this was the first one since 2017. I don't know if that had anything to do with it. But even here in the United States, I mean, all the games in Arizona in the pool play rounds were like sellout crowds, man, at Chase Field. Like you had 45,000, 48,000 people a night at these games in March. And then same thing in Miami. Dude, you look at Miami Marlins games in the regular season, they're lucky to draw 10,000 people to a game. You had 45,000 people there nightly for these games. I'm thinking to myself, I don't even know if they have enough employees at whatever it is, Lone Depot Park, where the Marlins play, to have, accommodated that kind of fan attendance for these games. It was cool to see that stadium packed like that in Miami. And then I was just reading the papers and hearing on the radio how like all these people had come from like the Dominican and Puerto Rico and all these other places had come to Miami to watch the World Baseball Classic. Because like you said, it means so much in these countries. So, I mean, it was just like Miami was like the place to be, which, I mean, let's be honest, Miami's always the place to be, but not for baseball, for nightlife, right? Beaches. But no, it was the place to be for baseball. And the sellout crowds, pride, people going nuts. And then you look at like the other side of it, like in Japan, the viewership for some of these games, even, not even in the knockout rounds. Some of the earlier ones, I think they had like 68% of television sets in Japan were tuned into this stuff. That's like Super Bowl numbers in this country, right? I mean, I think 77% of televisions in the United States were tuned in for the most recent Super Bowl. You had almost 70% of television sets in Japan tuned in for this in March, for a World Baseball Classic that we thought nobody cared about. That says something to me. That's crazy. And I was seeing like something like 50% of the TVs in Dominican Republic and at Puerto Rico were tuned into this thing. So yeah, you're right. In other places, it has such a, I don't know, the fans care. It seems like they care so much more than we do as Americans. But let's not like slight the American interest for this one. I think the American interest was way up. I just saw, I think it was like 5.5 million people tuned in this country to watch the WBC final between the United States and Japan. That's a significant number for baseball in March, dude. Let me give you some perspective. Baseball, I was reading an article. It was on MLB.com. It's from February 2023. It was written by David Atler. The title of the article is "Baseball Continues to be the Most Viewed Local TV Programming." Baseball, I'm going to read a little bit of this. Baseball is a national pastime, but it's also local. Blah, 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 blah. It's just talking about how the regional sports networks have such high ratings airing regular season baseball games. In almost every market in the country on any given night in the regular baseball season, a local broadcast of a Major League Baseball team in that locality will beat any primetime cable television show. And in like the top markets like New York, Philadelphia, maybe Los Angeles, things like that, Chicago, maybe. I have to look at obviously we're going to know New York and Philly, I'm sure, but other markets too. In those markets, it'll even beat the regular television primetime programming, like your Channel 2, Channel 5s, So baseball has a huge, huge market share for regular season games. That being said, on a night, on average, statistically, when all 30 Major League Baseball teams are playing on a given night, 2.6 million people will tune in to watch Major League Baseball on any regular season night, all 30 teams combined. And they lead the market share for that night in each locality, pretty much across the board. For this World Baseball Classic game, like I just said, for that one game, you had 5.6 million people tuned in. Dude, it wasn't the World Series. I mean, it wasn't a playoff game per se for what we would think would draw a bigger rating. And let's be honest, Major League Baseball postseason games don't draw well on TV anymore because of the fact that baseball is such a regional sport, right? But these regional games during the regular season, you get a lot of viewership. But again, all 30 teams combined on a good night in the regular season, you get 2.6 million viewers, 5.6 for the World Baseball Classic final. Dude, I call me sold. And even this one, I had my ebbs and flows about how I felt about it because let's talk. I'm a Mets fan, Jay. Dude, our season for a minute just felt. I mean, obviously, I know the season's not derailed. There's a bigger picture here. I get it. But in the moment, watching when Puerto Rico eliminated, who did they eliminate in that game? I'm drawing a blank. Dominican? I think it was Dominican, but Puerto Rico eliminated
Venezuela.
Dominican eliminated. No, Puerto Rico eliminated Dominican because Diaz is on Puerto Rico, and they won the game and they're jumping up and down in celebration. Edwin Diaz blows out his knee. He's out for the year. So I'm like, oh my God! But let's be honest here. When you calm down, you think about it. That could happen in a spring training game. He wasn't even playing the game when it happened. He was jumping up and down. And everything I've heard, they talk about like that wouldn't just happen unless you already had like micro tears in your knee. So obviously his knee at some point was probably going to go. And then let's just look at your Phillies a couple days ago. Regular season, I mean not regular season, but regular spring training game. Your boy Royce Hoskins is playing first base, non-contact injury, falls to the ground, can't get up, torn ACL out for the year. Didn't happen in the World Baseball Classic. So some of the things that we like jump to justify why we hate the World Baseball Classic. Oh, injuries. When you calm down and you look at it, you realize, hey, you could blow your knee out in your backyard, right? Playing with your kids. You could blow your knee out in a spring training game. Now, granted, the Altuve injury kind of sucks. You got hit in the hand, but you can get hit in the hand in a spring training game. That's another big injury that happened in the World Baseball Classic. Altuve got hit in the hand with a pitch. He's out for a while. I know he had hand surgery. But all told, dude, I'm sold on this fucking thing. And Jay, I thought one of the most poignant and coolest moments was in that World Baseball Classic final when you had Team USA and Team Japan, when they each came out from either side of the field, led by the unofficial captains, I guess. On the U.S. side, you had Mike Trout carrying the American flag, leading his team. And on the other side, you had Shohei Ohtani carrying the Japanese flag, leading his team. And just how cool it is knowing that the teammates on the Angels, neither one is probably going to taste the playoffs this year, and Trout's tasted the playoffs once in his career like a decade ago, and Ohtani hasn't yet. So just seeing them playing in meaningful baseball games with a sellout crowd, and I mean, this was the highlight of both of their careers to this point, and just seeing these teammates representing their countries on the opposite sides carrying the flags out, and then it ends with Ohtani striking Trout out. Poetic. I mean, it was just awesome. It was awesome. Congrats to Japan on winning the World Baseball Classic. But, dude, Jay, that's where I'm at with it, bro.
I mean, you stole the show there. Yeah, I honestly don't mind me. I honestly really thoroughly enjoyed it. Like, I enjoyed watching superstars play. And I actually have a better appreciation for how good Japan players are, Japanese. Like, honest to God, like I looked at every single player on their roster, and I know you have a couple of the guys in the major leagues now. You have obviously Senga, you have Matsuzaka is on the Yankees, you got obviously Ohtani, who we spoke about. He's the poster child. But like every single player on that team, I could compare and say they could make it in the major leagues if they wanted to come over. And that just shows you like how good Japanese baseball is and like how close they are to our level.
Well, dude, I mean, I agree with that, but I find it even more amazing when you look at tiny islands like the Dominican Republic and Venezuela and Puerto Rico, and you look at the amount of Latino players from these little islands that are in Major League Baseball. That's mind-blowing. Jay, you're talking islands that are like the size of New Jersey. How does a little island like that have that much talent on it? It just shows you the far-reaching, how far baseball reaches on a global level compared to even the NFL. I mean, let's be honest, the NFL is the king in the United States, but not like baseball on a world global level. And then you just see the passion of these little areas and the talent that they put out. It's just like It's crazy, Jay. It really is crazy the amount of talent these countries put out. And we didn't even get into another thing here, what the World Baseball Classic did. Dude, the Cuban national team was on U.S. soil in Miami playing baseball since the first time since like pre-Castro, I think. I mean, it's just amazing what it did. And look at the talent Cuba has. And you don't get to see these guys unless they defect. That's when you have like these Yoenis Cespedes and guys like that, because they sneak out and they come here on a boat, and the talent from that little island. I mean, it's awesome. It's really awesome. And just like, just the passion of the Cuban people on both sides. Like, you had all these Cubans that are Americans now in Miami torn because obviously they love their compadres from Cuba, the players, but they weren't rooting for Cuba because they can't stand that regime. So they're Americans, and you had the protesters outside. It was surreal. It just shows you that how baseball can just really like get its fingers into the fabric of culture and like what it can do and how it can bring people together. Or even show how in many ways we're not together.
You even had the player, Randy Arozarena, who I believe is Cuban, and he played for another team.
He played for Mexico because his family defected from Cuba when he was young, and he grew up in Mexico. Yeah, and he refused to play for Cuba. Obviously, I don't think he could anyway. I don't think so because the way that is, like, Cuba is like those guys have to play on the Cuban national team. It's like that's their job, right? It's it's like the Soviet hockey team in 1980. But you get what I'm saying. It's just the World Baseball Classic was so far-reaching, and it put somebody that we talked about into the spotlight. So let's talk a little bit more about Shohei Ohtani. Jay, the guy's a superstar on a global level. He's going to be a free agent. There's so many layers that we can get into to talk about this guy. I mean, first and foremost, do you think he's going to be on my Mets?
I mean, it wouldn't shock me because they have the money. They're one of the few teams that actually has the money and has an owner that would be willing to do it.
Yeah.
I'm not ready to say.
And in New York with the Japanese population, I mean, it's a win-win.
I think the Mets, Yankees, Dodgers, I mean, it's going to be one of those three teams. I mean,
but you know what you got to think about here, Jay? This goes back to a conversation we've had on the show many times. It's not just the haves and the have-nots, but it's also the people who actually want to invest in their team and see the bigger picture of how that investment can pay for itself. Now, granted, I know not all teams are in New York. Like, you're not going to have the big Japanese population maybe in Cincinnati, right? But I'm sure there are other communities besides New York that have a big Japanese population where bringing in a guy like Shohei Ohtani, even for that kind of money, is going to reap financial benefits for the interest it's going to generate. Well, bottom line is New York is definitely top on that list. I mean, so as a Mets fan, but I'm just saying even though it's like, the obvious thing is, Steve Cohen has the most money. He can do it. There's more to it than that. I mean, it makes sense as an investment. Dude, the Japanese population in New York, the Asian population in New York is huge. A superstar like this, dude, there's a ton of revenue to be made by having Shohei Ohtani on the Mets. So it's not just about, we could throw this money at him because we can, although that is part of it. There's going to be a return on that investment, and I want to get into another thing. Long term, you're going to make this huge, whoever it is, Mets, whoever else, you're going to make this huge investment into Shohei Ohtani. Dude, he's a superstar like we've never seen before as far as like he pitches, starts, and plays every day as a DH or in the field, can hit 30, 40 home runs, drive in 100, hits 260, 270, can pitch, 12 strikeouts per 9 innings with a 2.2 ERA and win 10, 15 games. He could be an MVP and a Cy Young candidate in the same season, offensively and for what he does on the mound. It's unheard of. But how long can he do it? How long? So we were talking about this off the show. What do you think? Is it plausible? And is it even worth thinking about that maybe he becomes like a closer one day with his stuff? Think about what he could bring you for. Let's be honest. He's typically a 5-inning guy. He's not going 8, 9 innings for the most part. So it's not like, and in today's game, most guys aren't. So there's something to be said for what his value is as a relief pitcher. If you could have him bring that top-notch stuff lights out for 1 or 2 innings a few nights a week rather than having to pace himself out over 5 innings as dominant as he is doing that. Imagine like this. Remember, like just think of John Smoltz when he was a closer, how lights out he was. I mean, he was great as a starter, Hall of Fame stuff as a starter, but his stuff, the way it played as in a closing role because you go all out, you don't have to pace yourself. He was insane, bro. I know you remember Schmaltzy as a closer, how dominant he was. I could see Shohei Ohtani being that guy. And is it possible? And is it something that anybody would consider?
I mean, I think he would be awesome at it, honestly. And I think it would all be up to him because I do know that one of the stipulations for him coming over here in the first place was that he wasn't going to come to Major League Baseball if he wasn't allowed to do both. Like, that was like his thing.
Yeah.
Being that was his skills. And I think he was adamant that if he was going to sign a contract with Major League, that he was going to be able to do both things. So I think it obviously would be up to him somewhat, but I do think that if people talked to him and said, look, this could extend your career, I don't think he would be opposed to doing that. And I think, you know, as you said, would he be able to? I mean, I think there's something to be said that could it affect him where he doesn't know if he's coming in, and could that affect how he plays, you know, like as far as like his mental capability of, you know, being prepared. I think that might be a challenge, but I think as far as his stuff goes, I mean, you saw it in the World Baseball Classic, him coming in there in that high pressure moment against Mike Trout in that big situation,
and just bringing it.
Honest to God, was probably the biggest situation they've both been in their careers. Let's be real. I mean, the stage that it was on, the millions of people watching, not only here and then in Japan, like, and for him to be able to come in and do what he did in that ninth inning, I mean, to be honest with you, I think it's definitely translates to closer stuff, and I think it would be deadly because think about it. Like, you look at our elite close, look at a guy like Edwin Diaz, like who you have, guys like Josh Hader. These guys are like, they're saving like 40 games. They're pitching in like 70, and they're striking out over 100 batters in those 70 games.
Insane.
It's insane the amount of like games that they can actually, even the games that they don't actually get a save, quote unquote, that they actually influence, like where they come in. It's insane to me the amount of like how closers have evolved, and like you used to have probably, I would say, if you looked at it, I hate using that term elite, but used to have like more high end closers than you do now. But I'm starting to see like a transition where you have that 4 or 5 guys that are maybe in that super elite status, like an Edwin Diaz. There's only like 4 or 5. Like Josh Hader, I would put up there. You know, Kenley Jansen used to be. I would say he's still up there, but he's getting older. But like, I'm seeing more of these like high leverage type guys where it's not necessarily where they're bringing them in for a save per se. They might come in the 7th inning because Pete Alonso, Francisco Lindor, Jeff McNeil are all coming up. So they might bring in that high leverage guy there in the 7th inning, get those guys out. And then by the time you get to the 9th inning, you're not even going to get to them again because you got through that trouble.
Yeah. I mean, that's one way these guys are influencing the game. But and I want to get into this a little bit because it brings us to another point about the possible hang up with switching Ohtani to this role. But like, these guys are influencing in the game of just the threat of them being brought into a game, not necessarily when they are brought into a game, but just like how a team might play it, knowing that this guy's out there and he could come in. And you think this is a lights out situation, especially when teams have 2 guys that are like that. Maybe one that's like super elite, and then maybe the next year, like some of these teams that have elite bullpens, like you think of the Brewers the last few years when they had Hader and Devin Williams, right? Devin Williams, is that who I'm talking about? Yeah. I mean, when you have a situation like that, it just changes everything. It's like shortening the game to a 6-inning game. So teams play it differently, right? The pressure is on them. They need to tie the game. It just changes everything. They might take it leads to a likelihood where you might pinch hit for a starter sooner because you have an opportunity to score, knowing that this game might be shortened because of the other team's bullpen. Which leads us to the point. Is it realistic to expect Ohtani to be able to play every day as a DH or in the field, knowing that if he was in that high leverage bullpen role, guys sometimes get up and down multiple times? We're not getting into that here. When you're in a role like Edwin Diaz, Kenley Jansen, or any of these guys, it's not like automatic that they just go warm up and they come into a game. Being a relief pitcher it takes a certain mentality, right? Sometimes, you get up, you warm up because the game's tied, but then you don't score and they sit you back down, right? And then maybe the next inning you take a lead and then they warm you up again, and then maybe you come in. But sometimes that can happen 3-4 times in the course of a game, depending on matchups as well, lefty righties, guys pinch hit. The game's tied. You're down a run now. Guys warm up, they sit down. They warm up, they sit down. That could happen 3 times before you come in the game. Is it realistic to have an investment like Ohtani and do that to him? I'm not going to give the answer to that. I'd like to hear the audience. Maybe if people want to comment even after the show, I'd love to hear what people have to say, because I think that's a challenge, and I don't know if it's realistic.
I mean, it's definitely a challenge, but kind of counterpoint to your original point that you brought up before that about having multiple guys. Whoever Ohtani goes to, if they did go to that situation, they could always add another guy. Like, I think back to like the Yankees a couple of years ago when they had Dylan Betances and Aroldis Chapman. That was like the two, like that's the
combo. That was when Betances was lights out. And
I remember like that was like a sick, and I think they actually even had David Robertson as before.
Yeah, he was in that mix.
It was like all 3 of those guys. So it's like they had guys that they could just bring in at will. And I think that that's kind of the way that the league is evolving. I'm not saying you're not going to have your guys like Edwin Diaz, where it's just like, your primary closer. But I think a lot more teams, if you look at it, like you said, and I don't know if it's analytics based. I don't know why it's become that way. I guess because more pitchers and, the fact of so many pitchers being good at striking out batters and batters not being able to make contact, all of that kind of combined. Like, you're seeing so many more teams go to that. Like, even the Phillies this year, like, look at the Phillies in free agency. Their bullpen last year wasn't bad per se, but what they do, they went out and they added 3 guys. I mean, they now have Jose Alvarado. They got Craig Kimbrell. They already had Sir Anthony Dominguez, and then they went out and they traded for Gregory Soto. So the Phillies have 4 guys that are potential closers. Like, that's sick. Like, to me, when you could just bring in left, right, left, they have like 4 guys, 2 righties, 2 lefties. So I think teams are kind of looking at that now that, they know the way the league is going. I know the Phillies have talked about it. The Phillies manager, Topper, has brought up about the fact that he loves being a matchup type manager where he has that ability to say, okay, well, if next inning, 3 righties are coming up, I'm going to bring in Kimbrel, knowing that after that, the Mets have 2 lefties and you can bring in, it's kind of matchup.
But it still goes back to the point. That's where pinch hitting comes in. Obviously, the double switch has been eliminated because of the DH, things like that. But it's still a challenge when you're having a guy because let's be honest, a guy like Craig Kimbrell, he's not doing anything else. You're talking about a superstar player that's going to get $500 million, and he's going to be playing every day as an offensive player. And then you're asking this guy, how does he do that? We still haven't gotten into that. The guy's playing right field, right? Where does Ohtani play? I'm actually drawing a blank because I always think of him as a DH. DH mostly, right? Does he ever play the field anymore? Barely, right? I'm drawing a blank. But let's just say he's a DH, whatever. You still have to worry about this guy focusing on offense, or if he is in the field. And then maybe how does he do that and then have to go up and back and forth to the bullpen, right? And his place in the order might be coming up. It's just a challenge. Definitely. I'm not saying it's impossible. It's just interesting to think about, right?
Definitely.
Yep. Anyway, let's get into something else a little bit. Let's get into some rock and roll, some heavy metal, shall we? Jay, I know you've been talking about the new Steel Panther album, On the Prowl, all week.
I love it.
I know you do. You love it. And I'm glad. I am glad because I love Steel Panther, and I've always tried to get you more into Steel Panther. But I think we want to talk about this record a little bit because I know you've been telling me how much you love it. Tell me about what you think of this record. I know it was my pick of the week a little while ago on here. Tell me what you're loving about this record.
Well, listen, I mean, besides what I said, as far as I think that they're so musically underrated, like their talent level.
Oh, no question.
Like on all levels. I mean, their guitarist Satchel, we've talked about how great he is. I mean, but the whole band, I just love how I love their lyrics. It's just funny how they poke fun of 80s metal, but yet in an awesome way.
By paying tribute to it. Yes,
and
I agree.
1987 to me is probably one of, at least in my opinion, one of their best songs they've ever written.
I love that song.
The vibes I get from that song alone make the album great. And
I love that song too. It's very nostalgic. I love the video. If you haven't seen the video, check it out. It's very Stranger Things-ish, but metal. these kids walk into an old studio and they find like an old distortion pedal, all fluorescent, and they click it and it brings up a computer screen. You see Steel Panther, looks like in the 1987. And all the lyrics are kind of harkening back to that period and how cool we were growing up. So yeah, it's awesome. But I think that's the highlight of the record. Look, I love Steel Panther. I've just been disappointed with their last couple albums because I think the thing that I loved about Steel Panther, which is everything you're saying. Musically, they're awesome. The hooks are great. Lyrics have always been very funny and clever. But I just think they've gotten less clever with the lyrics. Like when I go back to Feel the Steel, Balls Out, and All You Can Eat, that's the holy trinity of Steel Panther. Dude, the lyrics were so funny. Like Bukkake Tears. I don't want to get too X-rated on the podcast here, but when he goes, there was so much love on your face, I couldn't see the tears. There was so much spunk on your face, me and the boys could hardly see the tears, whatever. Now, I don't want to get into, if you know about what a bukkake is, there was so much love on your face, I couldn't see the tears. I just think it's funny. It was very, like, you have to think about it, but it was gross and nasty. Or like when they had, if you want to be like Tiger Woods, fertilize the ladies in your neighborhood. Like, I don't know. The lyrics were just so funny and on point. I don't know. It just doesn't seem as clever as it used to be. It's just more raunchy now. It was raunchy then, but clever. And the hooks were awesome. Like, I love whoa, whoa, there she blows.
Dude, they are.
Dude.
I don't know, but all I know is, and maybe you're right. Maybe I just didn't get to them. I was late to the party, so maybe that's why I actually like the album. But I could see where you're going because I have listened to previous albums, and I do think that it's kind of like more of the same. So you're right; they're not really adding any new elements.
Yeah, exactly, and because they've already done it, the lyrics just come off as less clever.
I get.
There was a lot more double entendre. It was just it wasn't just raunchy, but it was clever. It was like the lyrics were very smart. You know what I mean? They were just really cool.
I like the song Your Instagram though, because I just think it's so funny with today's day and age. Like, where like all of these bots on Instagram message you, and it's like this hot girl, and then like you actually message them, and then you realize like their spelling is wrong, and then they start asking you for money, and then you know they're a bot. So it's like I just thought that was clever. I mean, I know what you're saying, but like I just like that they sing about real life issues.
Yeah, it's very current
that
stuff.
Like we deal with. Yes,
exactly, and from a perspective of like older guys like us that like can't believe the world we're living in. So I don't get me wrong, I still love them. I want to see them when they come around this year. Don't get me wrong. I'm just saying I just want Balls Out again. Am I asking too much, Steel Panther? I want another Balls Out. Give it to me. Anyway, brother, let's get into another thing. Picks of the week. Who is going first this week?
Oh, that'll be you.
Okay, that's fine. So my pick of the week, Wolfgang Van Halen, just dropped a new song and video from his upcoming album. I think the album's called Mammoth WVH2 or Mammoth 2. I think it's just called Mammoth 2. But dude, it is freaking awesome. The name of the song is Another Celebration at the End of the World. And dude, I mean, to me, it's like one of the coolest guitar tracks that Wolfgang has put out with Mammoth WVH. I mean, it's like total 80s riffing. It's got a tapping solo like his dad. It's awesome. But I think what's even cooler about it is the video. I don't know if you've seen it yet. Have you had a chance to watch the video, Jay?
I watched it earlier.
Dude, here's what I take from the video. So if you haven't seen it yet, it basically shows, like, if anybody who knows about Wolfgang Van Halen and Mammoth WVH, he plays everything on the albums. It's all him, like the bass, the guitar, the drums, all the overdubbing, vocals, background vocals. He's like the Trent Reznor of metal. I mean, it's all him on the record, right? But obviously, he can't go out on tour and play these records all by himself, so he has to hire a touring band. So that's kind of what the video is. It kind of shows him in the studio. It's Wolfie talking to himself, like two different Wolfies, and the one's like trying to play the guitar part, and he's messing it up, and Wolfie's just like, "Oh, do you even play guitar? Do you even know what song we're rehearsing?" And he fires him, and then his bass player, which is also him, is asleep, and the drummer hasn't showed up, which is also him. So basically, he goes to the bar all depressed, and the bartender's, "What's got you down, man? The band break up?" And he's like, "Yeah." And then some dude walks up and he's like, "Hey, man, what's got you down?" They buys him a shot, and he shows that he's a drummer. And Wolfie long story short, it's like his actual live band. He kind of recruits him in this bar. And to me, the message of the video is all about his band. Like, he can't do it without his band. And I thought that was really cool too. Just like, Tip of the Cap to his live band. It's a funny video. It's humorous. The song kicks ass. My pick of the week is, again, Mammoth WVH, the new song, Another Celebration at the End of the World. Obviously, the album's not out yet. It's coming out, I think, in May. But this is the first track that's been released from it, and it kicks ass. Make sure you check it out from the upcoming album, Mammoth 2, Mammoth WVH, Wolfgang Van Halen. That's my pick of the week. What do you got, Jay?
So my pick of the week, it's from a band that I've actually really grown to love over the, obviously past 10 years. I'm a diehard Avenged Sevenfold fan. We've been waiting and waiting and waiting for new material from this band. It seems like almost 10 years. Like, I believe The Stage came out in 2016.
Yeah, it's crazy.
And we're now in 2023. So almost, so what, 8 years since they've put out an album. So they have an upcoming album. I don't think either they haven't announced it, or I believe maybe it's out in June. But they did drop the first single off of it called Nobody. And it's funny because when I first heard it, I texted you that I didn't like it.
And I actually did kind of like it.
And I didn't. But I got to be honest with you. As is the norm with me, I always give music another chance. And I've obviously went back and I listened to it a couple times. And I got to be honest with you. It's definitely grown on me. I love Avenged Sevenfold, and part of the reason I love them is because a lot of their music and their style of music is obviously influenced by bands that I grew up loving, like Guns N' Roses, Iron Maiden, Judas Priest. I mean, all of these bands are their main influences, and they kind of mesh all those styles in their music. Yep. But you can obviously recognize Avenged Sevenfold generally by their guitar sound. The tone of their guitar, because
that dual guitar,
Sinister Gates, and they have that certain vibe that it puts off. But this song actually kind of reminded me of like an offshoot of like maybe the next step of The Stage. And I know you weren't a fan of The Stage, but I'm actually a huge fan of that album. I think it's one of those niche albums, though. I think you kind of have to have. I love like. I've always loved and enjoyed a story, and those kind of like albums that tell a story. And that's The Stage was about, like, basically it was about I'm drawing a blank. Evolution. It's like the story of evolution, and a lot of that music, if you listen to it, it kind of gives you that like a spacey vibe. So this song kind of like, when I listened to it at first, I was like, I didn't really hear that. But the more I listened to it, I was like, yeah, you know what? They really have kind of gone to a different level, like where they're trying new things. Because I think for a while there, a lot of their music was sounding the same until when they put out Hail to the King. That was actually my favorite Avenged Sevenfold album, besides Nightmare. I know you love Nightmare.
Yeah, I love Nightmare and I love Hail to the King. Those are my two favorites.
I think Hail to the King really took them to like another level.
Well, Hail to the King. See, that's a controversial. I love Hail to the King, but like a lot of people didn't like it as much because it kind of like simplified the music. It was kind of more like 4/4 time. It was more of like a tribute to their favorite bands. But I love that. That didn't bother me. Like a lot of people, like seriously, if you listen to like Shepherd of Fire, it sounds like Trust, right? And if you listen to
Coming Home, sounds like Iron Maiden.
Totally sounds like Iron Maiden, exactly. And if you listen to Doing Time, it sounds like a Guns N' Roses song. This Means War sounds like Sad But True. Like, so you could almost pinpoint each song, but that's fine. That's fine. But go on. I didn't mean to hijack your point.
No, you're not hijacking it. I love, that's why I love Picks of the Week, because we always have other discussions. But like, honestly, like that's what I love about Avenged Sevenfold. And I know that, like I said, I know you didn't really like The Stage. I would like you to go back and take a deep dive and listen to it more.
I think you're right. I don't think I gave it its due.
I think musically, like, and I know it's different because it wasn't like, they did a lot of like, they tried new things. I mean, they used like harps, and like on one of their songs, they use like a tuba and all these different instruments, like to kind of make sounds and stuff. And like they kind of just did a lot of like, what's the word I'm looking for? I'm drawing a blank here with words, Aaron. You got to help me.
Well, I mean, I'll tell you this about the stage. I mean, dude, I do need to go back and revisit it. I talked to you about this earlier in the week because they also released the deluxe edition a couple years ago. And dude, I mean, I hadn't listened to it. I'll admit that I hadn't, but until recently, and they did an awesome Pink Floyd "Wish You Were Here" cover. But I think the cooler covers were the ones you wouldn't have expected. They did God Only Knows from the Beach Boys' Pet Sounds album. They did Runaway, the Del Shannon classic. They did even a Mr. Bungle cover. So, I mean, it was awesome. The covers were freaking awesome from the stage. So I do need to go back and revisit the record. I just think for some reason when the stage came out, because it followed Hail to the King, which had simplified and streamlined their sound so much, I don't think I was mentally prepared to have the attention span to devote to the stage. Maybe if that album had come from another band, but I'm being honest with you. I need to go back and listen to it.
Well, and like I said, it might just be me being selfish because I love concept albums. I do. I've always loved.
Yeah, but concept album or not, I just think it was just a much more complex musically. It was a much more musically complex record, and I don't think I was in a place at that time to want to listen to it after the other, after Hail to the King, because it had streamlined their sound so much. But dude, I don't even know if you've had a chance to go down and listen to the deluxe edition with these covers. You really need to. I mean, it's freaking awesome. The Beach Boys cover, only God knows why, is a phenomenal cover. And that's my favorite Beach Boys record. Pet Sounds to me is a masterpiece of a record. See, I'm not just a metal guy. I like all music. And Pet Sounds came out at a time where Brian Wilson was tripping on acid and experimenting with sounds. And that album is just so influential to so many bands. And it just, when you listen to an album like The Stage being so eclectic in its sounds, it makes sense that they would have covered something from the Pet Sounds record in hindsight. So I didn't expect it, but now that they did it, I kind of see how they would have done it. So yeah, definitely check that out, man. And same with the Mr. Bungle cover. Another real.
So I will check that out, and you're going to check the actual stage out.
Absolutely.
We'll reconvene.
Yeah, we'll reconvene. Anyway, awesome pick of the week. I almost feel like the stage became the pick of the week.
Well,
that's okay. That's okay.
Because I feel like this new song, the new track at least, I don't know if the whole new album is going to be like the stage, but I felt like this was kind of like the next step in that journey of Avenged Sevenfold. So hopefully, more to come on that.
Awesome. Anyway, brother, another great show in the books. Hope everybody enjoyed it out there. If you have anything to comment, hit us up. Twitter, YouTube, Facebook, Instagram, TikTok. Hit us up at Sports and Metal. On TikTok, we're at Real Sports and Metal. Make sure you also visit our website, www.upontheroofchimneysweep.com. And make sure you check out our sponsors, LaTerrain.com. Go to www.laterrain.com, LA-TOURAINE.com. Use our exclusive promo code S&M. I'm going to repeat, exclusive promo code, because with that promo code, you're going to get a whopping 25% off your purchase of a beautifully handcrafted watch. Make sure you check out their new Cartographer watch. It's an unbelievably beautiful watch, and you're going to get 25% off. On a $270 purchase, that's like $70 off. I mean, that's a lot of money off. Is my math right? I'm close.
You're very close.
Anyway, it's a big discount. Check it out. Use our promo code S&M. That's the letters S&M as in Sports and Metal. And also make sure you check out betus.com. Use our affiliate link. You can see it on the screen below me. Bingo right there. And if you're listening later on Apple Podcasts, Spotify, or any other place where you like to check out your podcasts, go to the description link in the podcast. You'll see the affiliate link. You're going to get 125% bonus on your first $100 deposit. And that's in perfect time for opening day, which starts next Thursday. So as it is, we love you. We had a great show. This is Aaron Savage and Jason Voorhees signing off. Rock on.
Peace out.
And that's our show. Tune in next time for more Sports and Metal with Jason Voorhees and Aaron Savage. Woo, yeah! Got something to say? Hit us up at sportsandmetal0423 at yahoo.com or on Twitter